Hello everyone, my name is Tabernacle John. I welcome you to the presentation on how to reload the 303 British cartridge. Before we get started, I just want to apologize if you can hear me breathing. I'm a rather large fella and I haven't found a good way to remove that in post yet. Secondarily, if I stumble or stutter or transpose words and syllables, I'm sorry. I just have a habit of doing that. Anyway, with that said, let's get started. So, what you've been seeing on screen is me sorting my brass. And that should be the very first step that you should take if you're using pre-fired brass. If you're using brand new production brass, first I'd say, where the heck did you get that? And secondarily, I'd say you can omit this step. But for the rest of us, you should check your brass before you load it. It'll save you a lot of headache. Now, this is a mixture of PPU, Mermington UMC, and S&B brass, and I have not had any issues with cases bursting. Now, what I've had issues with is case head separation, and that is when the case and head of the case separates along the solder joint, leaving the case stuck inside of the gun. You can very easily avoid this by inspecting your brass before you load it, and you should be looking for a ring forming around, let's call it, the bottom sixth of your brass. Now, people will see that, look at their fired brass, and see some scratch marks and a nice bright shiny spot, kind of a ring around the base of the cartridge there, and think, what's that? Is all of this brass no good? And odds are that that brass is good. This is what I'm going to call the red herring ring. This red herring ring is caused by the fact that not all of the cartridge is supported by the walls of the chamber on the Lee Enfield. When the brass is fired, it expands to the walls of the chamber, causing them to rub against each other. And when you extract the cartridge, that act of extracting it will cause an imprint scratch marks onto the base of the cartridge, or the body of the cartridge, my apologies. And since the bottom six does not actually come in contact with the walls of the chamber, that can lead to that bottom six not receiving the same scratches as the rest of the cartridge. This is perfectly normal. There's no issue with that. Now, here I'm going to cut to a very good shot of what I mean by the wear ring. This is a very severe case. This particular ring goes all the way around of the base of the cartridge, although sometimes they don't always do that. And this ring is particularly deep. I could have felt it with my fingernail. Sometimes it's not that deep. Here in the still frame, we can see the red herring ring and the actual wear mark ring. So what you're looking for is that lower wear mark ring, not the higher red herring ring. Here it's harder to see the red herring ring on the cartridge on the right, but on the cartridge on the left you can definitely see it. So comparing the two, here in the light, you can very much see the difference between the wear ring you should be concerned about and the wear ring you should not be concerned about. If your cartridge looks like this, you should get rid of it. Now, once you're done sorting all your cartridges, you gotta clean them. Here, what you see on screen is a Franklin Arsenal dry tumbler. What I'm putting in it is corncob media, basically dried corn husk. What I'm going to do next is put some brass polishing compound in the corncob media. This is also by Franklin Armories. This all came in a kit for about, let's call it like $60, I think it was. That's why it's all Franklin Armories. And once I got about, call it a tablespoon of polishing compound in there, I put the top on and I screw it down. And once it's all the way screwed down properly, I'll turn it on for about 10 minutes. This step is to ensure that the polishing compound is well mixed throughout the polishing media. So after about 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top off, take the dirty brass cartridges, and then put them inside the tumbler, put the top back on, screw it down, making sure it's tight, finger tight, and then turn on the machine again. Now, for how long you should tumble this stuff is up for debate. There are many different ways and methods of tumbling, some more effective than others. If you want my own personal opinion, using this corncob media and this Franklin Armories tumbler, usually I let it go overnight. That results in a very satisfactory level of cleanliness. Additionally, I also usually tumble them with the primers out. However, for this run, I thought I'd keep the primers in as an experiment to see if anything else would be affected by that. I also took the advice given by British muzzleloaders, and I bought my corncob media from the pet store. This is actually corncob kitty litter. This was far less expensive from the stuff at the gun store, and you got way more of it. So, anyway, once it's all done tumbling, since I did not deprime these earlier before cleaning, the next step is going to be depriming and neck sizing. So you take the cartridge, make sure it's free of the corncob media, and you run it through the depriming and neck sizing die. Or at least you try to, and then you hit the lip of the die and have to try again. Once you successfully try again, you have a very nice, very clean, deprimed, and neck-sized piece of brass. And here it is next to a very dirty, unneck-sized, and still primed piece of brass. The difference between those two, pretty easy to see. However, what's harder to see is the difference between a non-neck sized, still primed piece of clean brass. Now, to the untrained eye, they look pretty similar. However, to people familiar, you can kind of see that the shoulder on the left cartridge is way more level, and when you look down the mouth, the neck of the cartridge on the left is way more circular and concentric. So, I just want to make a note here and take this opportunity to do so. Make some remarks about full length sizing versus neck sizing. When you're neck sizing, you are only resizing, and by resizing I mean physically remolding the brass of the brass part of the neck. And this can improve longevity since it overall puts less strain on the brass each time you size it. This is useful when you're using the brass in the exact same rifle the brass was originally fired at, because when you fire a cartridge, the brass will conform to the chamber of that rifle, and either through wear or through human error, not every rifle and their chamber is concentric to each other, even rifles of the exact same make and model. If you want to build up a pool of ammunition, let's say you have several Lee Enfields, a number 4 Mark 1, a number 3, a number 1 Mark 3, a number 5, and you want to make ammunition you can use in any of the rifles, you want to full length size the die, or the brass. Now, this will remold the entirety of brass and return it to factory specifications. This means it should fit any of your Lee Enfield rifles. However, since it does put more stress on the brass, it can cause a shorter lifespan. So, just to reiterate, if you're going to be using your ammunition in the exact same rifle, and I do mean the exact same rifle, not just make and model, but the exact same rifle the brass casing was originally fired out of, you can go ahead and use neck sizing. If you're going to be using the ammunition in any other rifle, then you want to use full length sizing. And you will have different dies for the both of them. Now on to the next thing. Just like how every one of us is born to drink water, just to have to piss it right out again, we're born to deprime our case just to have to reprime it again. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm grabbing primers out of this primer tray with the priming tube, and once my priming tube is full, it's going to be put into the primer feed mechanism of the press. These are a mixture of large rifle primers and large magnum rifle primers, I believe, from Federal and Gynex out of Serbia, I think it was, or Germany, somewhere around there, somewhere in Europe. And large rifle magnum primers just burn for hotter and longer, so they make for more reliable ignition in colder climates. So I've loaded the tube into the priming mechanism, the primer feed mechanism. I've got my primer pokey stick. It's very important, the primer pokey stick. And I'm going to get a deprimed, clean, and neck-sized case. Hurry up, bozo, get one. There we go. Here we can see it's all clean. The neck has been sized, and there is no primer in the primer pocket. The primer pocket's a bit dirty, but it doesn't matter that much. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the brass casing. We're going to grab our primer poking stick, put a light amount of force on the primer stack to make sure primer falls onto the priming arm, into the priming cup, and then a bit of upwards force on the lever so that we can seat the priming arm under the brass case. And then a bit of downwards pressure on the lever so we can seat the brass case onto the primer. And now we have a nice primed case. Just like with most things in life, the fun parts are the most dangerous parts, and that's going to be, in this case, throwing your charges. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our gunpowder. We're going to be using IMR 4350 today. We're going to grab our Lyman pocket scale, our weight calibrator for the scale, and the secondary receptacle and a little orange spoon. The very first thing we're going to be doing is going to be transferring powder from the original container to a secondary container. Now, while I do this, I want to take an aside and kind of put an exclaimer right here. Please, please, please do your due diligence when you're working out powder charges for your own cartridges. It's not that hard. I got my powder loads using Spear's website because they had a link to their powder loading data with the projectiles I bought. Really, there are a myriad of things you should take into account. Most manufacturers have figured it out for you. All you have to do is find what projectile you're using, what weight it is, and the very much odds are that projectile manufacturer has data for you. So make sure you follow their data guides. If you do not, you are at a very, very, very real risk of blowing up yourself, blowing up your rifles, blowing up people around you, and just generally having a bad time. I also want to say, although this is a presentation about how to reload 303 British, you shouldn't replicate to a T exactly what I'm doing here, especially when it comes to powder charges and soaring charges. Please do your own research. I don't want to have to receive a bunch of angry hate mail saying, "You blew up my rifle, your advice blew up my rifle, I hurt myself, I'm coming for you." I just want to make sure to say right now, please do some due diligence when deciding your powder charges. Alright? Great. So now that we have that out of the way, what I'm doing is I'm calibrating my scale with my 100-gram weight here. Once I calibrate my scale, usually I like to do this every time I start reloading and throwing charges because uh, the scale can be finicky. I'm going to take my powder pan, I'm going to put that on top of the scale, and I'm going to zero it, meaning I'm going to adjust the scale so that it shows 0 while I have the pan sitting on it. This is so that I can tell how much powder is inside the pan, and I'm not including the pan weight itself. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm also going to switch the measurement from grams to grains. Here the pan weighs about 114.7 grains. What we're going to do is with the pan on there, we're going to zero the scale. And what we're going to do lastly is we're going to fill the powder dribbler. The powder dribbler is a tool that we use to be able to dispense individual grains, or sticks in this case, of powder, so that we don't have to go rooting around in the powder receptacle to get an exact amount. So there I am, taking some powder. It does not require as much as it does in the secondary powder receptacle. And now I'm completely ready to start throwing charges. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting as close to 47 grains as possible before using the dribbler, and then I'm going to dribble out here a couple more grains so that we can get an even 47 grains of IRMR 4350. Now, like I said, the load I'm using here is straight off of the projectile manufacturer's website, but I will list them out right now. I am using Spear, I think core locked, soft point, jacketed soft point, non-boat tail projectiles. They're 180 grains and they are 311 caliber. Now that I have the right charge, I'm going to take my funnel and let the gunpowder flow down into the cartridge case here. And I want to make sure to let it naturally flow into the cartridge case. You do not want to tamp this down. That can cause pressure spikes when firing and can cause issues not only with accuracy, but it can hurt your rifle. So here's one of the projectiles I mentioned earlier. You can see the soft point. Usually ammunition like this is used for hunting, but I'm just going to use this for target shooting fun. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to the press and we're going to be seating the bullet. Now, usually people fill all of their brass casings before starting the seating process. However, I hate playing 21 pickup with gunpowder after I drop the casing full of gunpowder. So instead, what I do is every time I charge a case, I do about a 90-degree turn and I seat the bullet right after charging it. Bit of upwards pressure into the seating die, and voila, we have a seated bullet. Now the neck tension should hold the projectile in safe. It should hold it in when I shake it and when I pull on it. If your neck does not have enough tension, you can crimp it, but Personally, I found that by the time the case does not have enough neck tension to hold the projectile securely, it's a case that I don't want to use, and or if that's totally up to you. What I will say is you should not crimp or apply a very large crimp to cast projectiles. That's something you should not do. Anyway, the very last step in this case is going to be measuring the overall length of the cartridge. The overall length is from case head to the tip of the bullet, and it should read 3.0750 inches, or at least as close as we can get. That's reading 3.0755. I'm going to deem that close enough. Like I said, we're not going for accuracy. And I think that bullet is ready to be fired. If you were going for accuracy, this is something that could affect it. So you'll want to make sure that if you're going for accuracy, you want to get it down to the factory specification, or whatever specification you find is the most accurate. So I'm going to take the finished cartridge, I'm going to put it in a labeled container, and that is now complete. So before we end off, I just want to take this chance to reiterate something and answer any questions you guys might have. First, I want to reiterate, please do your due diligence when you are investigating powder charges. You can't just copy my exact load because it might be different. Your rifle might not shoot as accurately, uh, or a myriad of other things. For every manufacturer of projectiles and powder, they have a loading data sheet for you, no matter what you're doing. Whether it's 303 or 30-06, they have it for you already done. When I say make sure you do your own research, I'm not telling you to scientifically analyze the gunpowder you select. I'm telling you to just Google everything. It's not very hard. I believe in you. Just take time out of your day to do this, lest you lose a couple fingers or your favorite rifle. So, to answer, let's see, answering first question here, how I think the question is going to be how much did this equipment cost, and where did you get it? So, this most of this equipment came in a kit. So my brass tumbling stuff came in its own kit. It was the Franklin Armory's brass tumbling kit. That was like $60. For the press and everything else, that came in the Lyman um, Brassmith Victory Press kit, I believe, and that was about $450 Canadian, about $500 after taxes. The dies are all Lee dies. I paid about $60 for my 303 British dies. That case trimmer, although we didn't really use it today, if you want me to use it, I'll let you know. Let me know, and I will do a video on case trimming. But that cost me about $100. So there are the prices. You might be able to get a good deal depending on where you look. But I got mine out of GoTenda. It's a store local here to Ontario, so they're pretty good about shipping out things for free when they're over a certain price threshold. So I guess you might want to check them out. I don't know. Some people have issues with them on the customer service, so I'm not going to exactly endorse them. Another question someone might have is, I saw you have a powder throw in the background of one of your shots. Why didn't you use it? That powder throw came in the Lyman kit, and I cannot for the life of me get the damn thing to work. So I don't trust the charges it throws, and I don't want it potentially blowing up my rifle. That's why I didn't use it. Another one here I have written down is, how long have you been doing this? Reloading? less than a year. I'm actually about a year now, I should say. Uh, I just wanted to make this video because I couldn't find British Muzzleloader's video. I know he took his original off of YouTube, but the link he has in his description now is gone. Like it goes to a dead link. And I want to show everyone that it's not that hard once you get over the initial cost of the equipment. Really reloading is very simple. All right. Hope that answers any questions. If you have any more, please leave them in the comments. And I will see you guys later. Bye.